Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Brett L. Pape. He's Coach Bruce, and this is the Coach. Bruce, what's up, my man? It's so good to finally get on here and get going on this, and I'm excited to do this with you, Coach.
We did it, man. We're here. We're live.
We're here. We're here. What an intro, huh?
We are going to make every rookie mistake you can possibly make. We're going to fly off script. We're going to have some fun. And we're just going to make it happen, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So when I started this, dive into the fantasy football community, it was really just simply something I wanted to get involved on Twitter because I looked at a lot of stuff last year, or I should say in 2019, started kind of looking at the feed and seeing what type of analysts were out there. And I was really impressed with what there was out there. And I just wanted to be a part of it. And when I got involved last year, you're one of the first guys to meet, and knowing your coaching background and knowing, you're pretty similar in age, and I felt like we hit it off right away. We were in a couple of leagues together, and to get this opportunity to do it with you is pretty sweet. And so before we get into it, why don't you tell me a little about how you just got involved in coaching and got involved in fantasy football?
Man, so coaching, I'll make a long story short. It's kind of a unique story, but I went to a small Division III school. Shout out to University of Redlands. You guys can see the jersey back here, but played in a small school, and I think every kid has a dream and aspirations of playing the NFL or the NBA or at a pro level, whatever sport it is that you play. And once that was over, I had a quick tryout with an Arena League team out here in Arizona with the Rattlers. I don't jump out of the gym, and I don't run a 4.3 40. Wasn't meant for me, but was able to get into coaching and coach youth football for a couple of years, and then spent 6 years at the high school level. I one of the top programs out here in Arizona, and had an opportunity to coach with a phenomenal offensive mind who ran a college-style offense at the high school level, and fell in love with the coaching aspect of it, the breaking down film, the review, the scouting, coming up with game plans. I mean, that was something I really, truly enjoyed, and that led to, I think we all played fantasy football. A lot of us did growing up, but some of us played at different levels, and I got into fantasy football probably more so through coaching. I know there was a practice we had where a couple coaches were hanging out as the kids were going through, pre-practice warm-ups, and one of them said, "Hey, why aren't we all in a fantasy league together? We're all talking about different leagues that we're in." And so we started a home league with a bunch of coaches, and that went on for 4 or 5 years. And that's probably when I got really entrenched into, coaching and having an opportunity to talk trades, while the kids are getting, water and a break during practice. So I've just been hooked on it ever since. I'm an old school, was a redraft guy for, probably 20 years. And then just a couple of years ago, dipped my toes in Dynasty, and I've never looked back, man. And I still do both, but I've probably got 90% of my teams are now on the Dynasty side. So have an absolute blast, man. And doesn't Twitter just bring everybody together? I mean, that's the crazy part. I mean,
it is crazy. It is
you crazy. And I would be sitting here doing a podcast after, hitting each other up last offseason.
Right. And it's so funny that you bring up what got you into coaching, because kind of similar in the sense that I just wanted to try and prolong my experience with football. High school football meant the world to me. It kind of put me on a direction to go somewhere. And the opportunities that it's afforded me over the years, I coached 26 years at a high school that I graduated from, was given the opportunity to head coach for a few years. Wasn't successful, but I wouldn't trade that time for anything. And it was just a situation where that allowed me to stay in the game. And it's funny that you bring up coaching brought you into fantasy football, because my story is very similar in the sense that we had a coaching fraternity in our valley that was very close. And despite the fact that on Friday nights, so we all wanted to beat the hell out of each other, at the end of the night, we'd always show up at the same bar, talk shop, enjoy each other's company, and then go right back to work the next day trying to beat each other. But then one of the coaching staffs on the one of the rival schools put together a keeper league. And this was in 1995, and we have been in that same league since. We just had a rookie draft, and that competition, wanting to beat those guys on Friday nights and then on Sundays in fantasy football, has always been the driving force for me. It's allowed me to compete at something that is kind of taken away with your age. So to be able to do that, and everybody wants to be a GM for your favorite team, and this gives you the opportunity to be the GM of your own team and kind of build it and do as you see. And I just wanted to get better, and that brought me to Twitter. That brought me to you, and brought us to where we're at now. And I'm just looking forward to it.
No, man, this has been awesome, man. I think the timing of it was perfect, I think, for both of us. And for those that don't know, I could share this quick story, but Coach Brad, I call him Coach too, but because he's got some coaching background. But I think you hit me up and we're like, hey man, why are we not doing a podcast? We talk all the time. We talk about our teams. We talk, through Twitter. We have a lot of the same, relationships with people on Twitter. And when you called, I was just starting to think, hey, I'm gonna do my own podcast, and I was going to try to, take my passion for bourbon and my love of fantasy football and marry the two. And so I was going to do, bourbon bangers and trophy hangers. I thought was a really cool, podcast name, but I had no idea where to start or what that was going to look like. And so when you reached out, I was like, dude, this is perfect, man. Two old coaches that bring hopefully a little bit more to fantasy football from a coaching perspective and understanding what's going on the football field and keeping your eyes off the ball and truly having a deeper understanding of what's going on over the course of a football game and what that looks like.
Correct. I mean, ditto on all of it. And to be given the opportunity to do it with the cut and to have our first go around be where we're not going in it blindly has been obviously a great resource for us. And I'm excited about it. I'm also excited that you and I have said many times that our goal is not to become analysts. We just want to continue to be lovers of the game. We want to continue to just simply try and get better. And in order to get better, if that means to join the analyst community, I'm all for it because I don't want to lose. I want to win. I don't want to continue to be the reason why I lost with silly decisions, like decisions to have a playoff run, make a trade where I send 3 first-rounders for a tight end thinking that he and Peyton Manning Thomas was going to take me to the promised land. And then I think week 14 that year, he, did something. He was out for the year. Or 3 years later, this is the least favorite trade of all time I made pre-Twitter. And that's, hearing all the hype coming out about Darwin Thompson. And I actually traded Kenny Golladay straight up for Darwin Thompson during that rookie year. I mean, stupid, dumb mistakes off the hip, not really putting much thought or effort to it, not having a plan, but just trying to be aggressive and trying to get out in front of people. And didn't always work. Sometimes, you hit the lottery and it does work, but more times than not, you're making more mistakes. So it's always been about just trying to get better.
I think that's a great thing about Dynasty too, is you're trying to make trades and build for the future, but sometimes you're sacrificing the opportunity to win now. And so there's different perspectives and how you look at that. You took a chance of getting a tight end thinking, hey, I'll give up some future draft capital to be in win now mode and have bragging rights in my home league. And sometimes those moves don't pay off. And you realize how short-sighted that might be. But you hit on a point that I think is awesome. And hopefully we bring that to, those that listen in. And shout out to Kevin and Christian, by the way, man. Appreciate the love and appreciate the comments. But I think that's what makes this whole community so much fun is neither one of us claim to be analysts. We're guys that have played fantasy football for, 20 plus years. We love the community. We've made some great relationships in it. We wanted to bring something that maybe was a little bit different, a little bit more unique. And, we don't really have a show sheet, which I know is big. We're kind of going to wing it. There's some things we've got pre-planned, but for the most part, man, we just want to talk football, have some fun and engage with those guys that are listening.
One of my favorite things, and when we were talking about the no show sheet, I love that. There wasn't much planning. We'll have a drink about 4:45. We'll talk for a few minutes, and then we'll get on the air. And it gives me, a guy who's got a few kids. In fact, I can put a whole starting football team out there on one side of the ball. it gives me an opportunity to talk to somebody else instead of always talk to my wife or someone else in the house who's kind of tired of hearing about the trades I did or didn't make.
Right. Yeah. My wife always is funny. She's always like, what are you doing? It's like, it's fake. It's not even real. Like, I don't get it. Like, why is it such a big deal? But bragging rights, man.
Bragging rights and just, it's like anything else. It literally is a game of skill. It's a game of where the effort you put in does pay off, and you just want to make sure that the effort you're putting in is the right effort, and it's not just simply taking dart throws throughout the entire draft or just throughout the whole process of free agent pickups, whatever it may be. It's having a plan and trying to execute it, and more importantly, stay disciplined to it. That's something that I've struggled with. That you bring up wanting to have bragging rights. Well, that desire has hurt me more times than it's helped me. And this last weekend, this league that I've been in for 25 years, we had our home league rookie draft last Saturday in Vegas. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it. As I've talked about a little bit on Twitter, my mom isn't doing well. She's in hospice care here. So I'm not able to leave the home right now, which is great because it's given us an opportunity to spend time together. But aside from that, the draft, it was still great. I was a little, I didn't have much ammo going into it. I traded 2 first-round picks about 2.5 months ago for one of my favorite young backs. I was so excited about getting him in Dynasty, and I just for sure knew that he was going to lead me to the promised land. And then I think it was about 2 Fridays ago, news came out that he tore his Achilles. And there goes Cam Akers, and there goes the home league, and there goes the draft. But I was able to get Rashad Bateman, so at least I didn't walk out empty-handed.
Oh, hey, shout out to Scott and Ryan who put on the Scott Fishbowl too. I think between the Carson Wentz injury and now Quentin Nelson going down, I've got Jonathan Taylor shares and Michael Thomas all on the Scott Fishbowl team. And so I'm already, before the first preseason game even starts, I'm already playing from behind, so we'll have some fun with that.
Cam Akers is in that one too. So Scott Fishbowl's kind of taking a big hit before we even start for myself. But should be fun. I'm really that was quite a surprise. I mean, you see all these top analysts in the country getting to participate and to get that invite. I know you had to be excited as much as I was.
Oh yeah, I mean, you hear about the Scott Fishbowl, and I didn't really get into the whole Twitter community. My whole Twitter was always about coaching. When I was active in coaching, it was about having contacts with college football coaches, trying to get kids that I'm coaching, an opportunity to play at the next level and get a free education. So my Twitter was all about coaching. And over the last year, I've done a complete 180 now that I'm not coaching anymore. And now it's all about the fantasy football community and being a better fantasy football player. Right. So it's amazing how that shift has happened. And now here we are and we're doing a podcast, man. So that's crazy.
More importantly, we're talking football.
Come on, man. A little bit of bourbon, talking football with a guy that you appreciate, man. It doesn't get any better than that.
What about the whole situation in Texas? And I only bring this up because you, my friend, have been working on something for a long time. And I think you released it this morning. You hear about all the great things about it prior. So why don't you tell me a little bit about Project 32? And the thing that I like the most about it is hearing about how you're going to have a charity every day that benefits from it.
So, hey, first and foremost, man, shout out to Matthew Cooper at @the_Coop. He's become one of my best friends in this space. I came up with the idea for Project 32, which initially was going to be a breakdown of 32 teams in 32 days, where we would break down everything from the coaching, the scheme, to the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends that were all fantasy relevant. Trying not to dive too deep into the rosters, but try to make it more current. But talking about the transition from 2020 to 21, and so the offensive line. People not understanding how important the offensive line is in terms of scheme and what you're trying to do as a play caller in the NFL. How that can affect your draft or matchups in a given week and who you play, and all those things that come into play. And Coop always does these rankings with football jerseys.
Right.
And I thought they were awesome. So I reached out to him and I said, hey, bro, I want to jump on a call with you. So he sends me his number. We jump on a call and we start talking. I say, hey, I got this idea. And I said, I want to use your graphics. I said, I want to put a team, for example, Dallas Cowboys. I want to put a team in 11. Crazy, I picked the Cowboys, right?
Yeah, right.
But I want to take a team and put them in, for example, Dallas their best formation is 11 personnel. When you can get your tight end, those 3 wide receivers, and Zeke in the backfield, that's their best personnel group. I say, can you do graphics, those jerseys with the player's number, the last name, and then at the bottom we'll put my dynasty ranking or maybe the redraft ranking for this current year during the preseason and make that part of the project. And he says, Bobby, I got an idea. Why don't we? I love it. Let's put it on a football field. We'll do it up, and so we'll put a couple players, kind of on the bench. I'm like, man, this is awesome. So then it turned into, I'm like, okay, well, what do you want? I mean, you're going to do graphics for 32 different teams. I want to compensate you. We all do this for free, but hey, I want to compensate you. And Coop goes, Bobby, let's just pick a charity, man. Let's pick a charity.
Right.
One for all 32 teams. And so that started us having this conversation. I said, well, how about we post it on Twitter and we get fans and analysts of those teams to pick a team and then a charity of their choice that is near and dear to their heart. Maybe they've gone through something personally. They have a family member or someone they know. And so we put that on Twitter, I think like 11 o'clock at night one night. Within 24 hours, we had all 32 teams picked.
That's awesome.
32 charities. And so the energy behind, I get the chills just talking about it, but
right.
The energy behind that has been awesome. And so we created a Project 32 chat room on Twitter, and people are always asking, when is the first team coming out? I can't wait to share my story. One guy sent a video in, so when his team gets released, you get to see his story behind that.
Sweet.
So the whole thing it's been absolutely awesome. And so this morning we lost. So first off, the Coop. Secondly, the whole team over at Yards Per, Matt FF Ball has been unbelievable.
And that's where you can find it. That's where you go find
at Yards Per. And Matt FF Ball is his Twitter handle. He's been unbelievable. We've jumped on a couple of Zoom calls. He's doing all the editing. If you can just picture me emailing him a whole new team page with positional breakdowns of everybody and projections, and he's got to go through and edit it. And then Third and Short, at Third and Short, Michael has done some insane graphics. You saw the one with the Texans today as a 32 ranked team, which is based on total fantasy points. And so we'll roll a team out from August 4th all the way through September 4th, all 32 teams, ending on that Saturday before the Thursday night opener with Dallas Cowboys and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So shout out to those guys who've been absolutely phenomenal behind the scenes. And this thing is just taken on. I've already got ideas of how we can improve it for next year. And those guys have been phenomenal to work with. It's a big shout out to those guys.
So every day, a new team until that Thursday game.
Yeah, and it's based off total fantasy points. Now, here's the crazy part. So you already have some injuries, right? You got Cam Akers. I got to go back and change the Rams projections. Well, that creates a ripple effect in terms of the total fantasy rankings.
Sure.
Not only in the running back position room, but also in the total. And, then you had Carson Wentz go down. Now you have Quentin Nelson go down. How does that affect Jonathan Taylor? So there's a lot of having to go back and reorder everything. And so now we've just decided, hey, first team came out this morning, which was Houston. Tomorrow will be the number 31 ranked team in total fantasy points. Now, Some of these teams are going to surprise some people, but when you look at the breakdown of the fantasy points, you'll understand some teams don't throw the ball a ton. So that wide receiver room takes a big hit. The quarterback passing yards takes a big hit. Wink, wink, hint for tomorrow. But that's kind of how it's going to work. And then the number one team on September 4th is a team that we project to score the most total fantasy points over the course of the 2021 season based on projections.
And based on projections, what exactly does that mean? Where did you get your projections?
So PPR format. So Yards Per came up with, and I know there's other sites out there that do, and they're all amazing. They're all beautiful people. I love what they do. But Matt, we've completely changed and revamped how we do projections now. So we start out with obviously total plays based on the scheme we think they're going to run, the type of record we think they're going to have. Are they playing from behind? Are they playing ball control at the end? All of those things come into play, and then you kind of peel it back from there and figure out pass ratio and shares and all that stuff. But it's just been absolutely phenomenal. So it is 32 to the number one team, and that'll be one team per day. And even though those rankings might change, we're going to keep the order the same because there's going to be more injuries. Unfortunately, There's going to be more things. And, I don't put injuries into my projections. I know those are conversations we've had with other people along the way that might have, Will Fuller. Now, if there's guys that already have suspensions they're serving, that's different. Obviously, we're going to
Sure.
take that into
Sure.
account, but I'm not going to assume that because a guy's been injured over the last 2 years, he's automatically going to get injured in this year. So I do it based off a full season. So some of those projections are going to be a little bit higher than maybe what people would think, but it's all, it's all relevant.
Who, without getting too much into it, is there anybody that you see in your projections that are worth owning from the Texans?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple. And so the first thing that with the Texans, and I remember talking to Matt and Coop and Third and Short and everybody, and we're trying to come up with the final rankings, all the graphics are right. And I'm like, the whole Deshaun Watson thing, for a while now, we felt like he's definitely not coming back. And I still believe he's definitely not coming back. So I didn't, even though he's there, but he's out now with a foot injury or whatever.
Right.
I just feel like there's been so much damage done in that relationship that he's
probably
they're
done. They're done.
Yeah, they're done. If he does, he's going to play somewhere else. But the bottom line to me was, I'm going with Tyrod Taylor. Yes, Davis Mills at some point could start. When that's going to be, that's tough to tell. So I'm just going to go Tyrod Taylor for 17 games, and we're going to figure it out. So understanding that and knowing that and what his strengths are, I feel like Brandon Cooks, I think that's the obvious choice. He's going to see volume. He's strictly the wide receiver one on that team. I think Nico Collins, big kid.
Love him.
The offense in Michigan was terrible. It is what it is. So don't look at his numbers and be like, hey, there's a reason why they drafted him. He's a big dude. He can go after it. I think he's going to be a good fit in that offense. It gives them something that that offense needs. And they brought in Anthony Miller, who, when he was with the Bears, I didn't think he had much relevance at all. Houston's going to be playing from behind. And right now he's that wide receiver 3 in Houston. So, yeah, he's a late round grab. He might be somebody during bye weeks or if injuries occur that might, see a little bit more volume. I'm not overly excited about him. But you've got other guys like Kiki Kate and Alex Erickson that they're going to do some special team stuff with too, though. So they're going to go 5 or 6 deep at that receiver position. But I think, David Johnson and Phillip Lindsay, what's that backfield going to look like? I had somebody give me some great feedback today. Got into a great conversation with him that he feels like it might be a 50-50 split between Phillip Lindsay and David Johnson, with David getting a little bit more work on the passing game. He could be right. That's the great thing about projections. They're just projections. We're going to hit on a lot of players. We're going to miss on some players. There's going to be some injuries that are going to affect, game scripts and whatnot. So, but yeah, those are players right there that I think are going to be guys on the Texans that I still feel comfortable. I just took Brandon Cooks in the draft today. I got him at great value. So, why not?
Yeah, I just, and one thing when I looked at your projections, 17 games, you don't think they're going to get a win?
So, truth be told, it was funny. At first, I'm like, I'm going to have them go 0-17, and I'm going to have Tampa Bay go 17-0 because why not? It's fun. Or Kansas City.
Sure.
As you start breaking the schedule down and you start looking at strength of schedule and you start taking in all the other factors, and you look at this team and the personnel that they've lost over the last 2 to 3 years, no DeAndre Hopkins, right? You've got Will Fuller is now gone. J.J. Watt is gone. They lost Davion Clowney a few years ago. They've lost Nick Martin from the offensive line. It's like you just look at what's happened. No first and second round pick in 2021 draft. Their first pick was in the 3rd round. They took Davis Mills because of, what's going on.
Yes, sure.
There's just there's so much turmoil there. And David Coley, God bless his soul, guy started coaching in 1978 as a running backs coach at Austin Peay. Spent about 20 years in the college ranks, went to the NFL, has been there now since Moby was a minnow, so,
right.
Now
with us both being former coaches, we got to root for the guy. You got to love the grind.
But at 65, I love Pete Carroll and nothing against, I love older people, trust me. But, he's a stopgap. He's a guy that's going to be the next 2 or 3 years. They're going to get some draft capital. They're going to make some good drafts, and then they're going to move on to somebody else. So to me, 0-17, do I think it's going to happen? No. I mean, what are the odds the team goes 0-17, right? But it was a fun way to kick it off. Like, why not have the first team, everything that's going on, and just say, hey, they're going to no Deshaun Watson. At some point, they're going to want to play Davis Mills, I'm assuming, because why not figure out what you have, right? I just there's a chance they could go 0-17. It's slim.
Absolutely. I would think you brought up their schedule. I'm sure if you go down each game, you're going to end up saying that's a loss, that's a loss, that's a loss. And it's unfortunate because where they were at a few years ago is not where they are now. And it's all related to the moves that were made unfortunately, in Mr. O'Brien's days, and just one move after another seemed to backfire.
Yeah, if I had the schedule in front of me, I'd break it down for you because I did do that. I went through every single game and was just trying to kind of forecast that out. And there's, again, it's a small chance, but I do think there's a chance that team could go 0-17. And Houston Texans fans, I don't know what we called it, the battler for Rattler, or whatever you want to call it. Sam
Sure.
Howell in North Carolina.
Are they back getting picks next year? I don't know. Is that in there?
I think so. I put the cart before the horse there. I don't have that in front of me. Like
Yeah.
but I do believe they have a first round pick next year, but if not, they need to figure a way to find one.
So I know you're not going to give anything away, but if it's based strictly off of fantasy football points projected for an entire team, any chance we can get a surprise as a team who's much higher than what you think they will be by record, or the opposite, a team who is lower fantasy-wise, but you see them being a team that's going to be very competitive?
Yeah, so try not to look at my notes, but while we're on, but there's one team, and I kind of already alluded to it, so I might as well stick with the theme. But the Baltimore Ravens, that's a team that I think you look at what they've done in the rushing game with Greg Roman, being one of the top rushing teams in the league in the last 2 years. And that's going to happen when you have Mark Ingram and you have J.K. Dobbins and you have, Lamar Jackson and you have Gus Edwards and you have, the people that they have in that offensive line. But when you look at the passing game, I think it was 100. I can't remember the total number of attempts we're off the top of my head right now, but their passing volume last year was not near what it was in the season that he won the MVP when he threw for, I think it was 36 touchdowns and 3,400 yards. So you have to look at that and go, yes, they still have. They drafted Rashad Bateman, who I love. He's my second-ranked wide receiver coming into the draft. I'm not a guy that with him believes landing spot matters. I think Rashad Bateman's the real deal. We've seen some clips from camp that show that. So Baltimore's a team that even though they're going to have to throw the ball a little bit more, I think Greg Roman realizes if I want to keep my job, we've got to find a way to play from behind because in the playoffs, if we want to get to the Super Bowl, we're going to be in those situations. And
sure.
The last 2 years, we exited. Yeah. So I think it's important for them. So that's a team that didn't score as high as I think people would think, strictly based off passing volume. So that affects your entire wide receiver room, your tight end room. Even though Mark Andrews is great, there's only so many receptions from that position. And then, a team that probably scores more than we realize, Green Bay Packers now. We didn't know if Jordan Love was going to be the guy, how the Aaron Rodgers thing is going to play out. So that's a team that I've got, scoring, I think even more points this year than they did last year with who they have returned. Aaron Jones deciding to come back and Devontae Adams. And now they've got Randall Cobb. I want to say Reggie Cobb. I'm going way back to Tampa Bay Buccaneers days. But, I love what they're doing offensively. It's the third year with Matt LaFleur. So I like what the Green Bay Packers are building over there. So I think they're going to actually outperform, as crazy as that sounds, what they did last year in 2020. Aaron Rodgers is fired up. He's got 1 year, and he's cashing in again.
And then he could go wherever he wants to go.
Yeah. So,
which will be, where do you think? I know everyone talks the easy choice or easy hope is that he goes to Denver, which would be great for guys like Jerry Jeudy and guys like Noah Fant and Courtland Sutton. All of it would be great for the Denver Broncos, but is there a place that you see him going that would be more beneficial?
Well, I loved him going to the Denver Broncos. I think that was an obvious choice. I love him going to, if the experiment in New Orleans doesn't work out, I still think that, what they've done defensively and with that and what Sean Payton can do from an offensive perspective. But the ultimate team for me was going to be the Colts. And then they signed Carson Wentz. I was like, man, could you imagine him behind a top 5 line and with a Jonathan Taylor in the running back? You got a Nyheim Hines who's great out of the backfield. Marlon Mack is back from his injury. Michael Pittman, I think, with better quarterback play, becomes a very good wide receiver 1. He's got potential there. So Paris Campbell, God, the guy can just stay healthy. He's a guy in the slot. So I think he can do some damage. So I felt like that was a team for Aaron Rodgers that I really, really liked. And my biggest thing was like, keep him out of the NFC.
Right.
That's where my Cowboys
How would
are.
that be? Yeah.
Keep him out of the NFC. I'm tired of seeing him beat the Cowboys in the playoffs or a game that might get him in the playoffs. I've seen enough of Aaron Rodgers as a Cowboys fan, so just get him out of the NFC, and I'm good.
You brought up your boy, and I call him your boy because I know one of the first things done in the fantasy communities, you did a blurb for a piece, and it was about how Carson Wentz was he was coming back. He was going to be someone that you felt like would really benefit from going to the Colts. His injury really, I wouldn't say that I'm anti Carson Wentz. I'm just not looking to acquire Carson Wentz. And if I could trade him in any capacity in the offseason, I did. I sent a deal that some people didn't like, and I ended up getting Kirk Cousins back in the deal. And for me, I was more happy with knowing what I was going to get every week with with Cousins. And it was just something that I was willing to take a chance on, even though he's a former MVP candidate. He was a top pick in a lot of fantasy drafts a few years ago. What was it that you really liked about him, and why do you think he would have had a bounce back year, or still could, depending on if it's 5 weeks or if it's unfortunately 12 weeks?
Well, I think the one thing that Carson Wentz showed, I think we can all agree on it. And if you follow my Twitter at all, even before I got into the fantasy, side of things, there was always a Dak Prescott versus Carson Wentz argument. And I think we know where that falls.
Where that ended up? Yeah.
Yeah, where that ended up. But, you look at the injuries that happened to the Eagles last season. And of course, it happened to the Cowboys too. So I can certainly relate what happened to that offensive line. And so you look at Carson Wentz last year and the message, if you look at his 2017 MVP season, what Frank Reich did with him in that offense, moving the pocket, giving him an opportunity. He was great off script. He could use his legs. So him getting reunited with Frank Reich in Indianapolis, again, with a top 5 offensive line, although it's not now, the Quentin Nelson injury, and they've got Eric Fisher and Ryan Kelly. They're also nursing some injuries. But and then you had the run game with Jonathan Taylor and Naheem Hines and Marlon Mack. He didn't have to be the guy.
Sure.
It wasn't all on Carson Wentz to make it happen. So you already had the Super Bowl with Nick Foles. He gets injured. He's 11-2. Nick Foles comes in, takes him to a Super Bowl. Mentally, he wasn't strong enough, as you could see, to handle that.
And then you just brought something up, and I'm going to interject only because that's one of my concerns about him. And it's a concern because, and I think it's almost reiterated now with the fact that despite having a team that a lot of people think that can compete for an AFC South title, despite having a team that a lot of people can compete for the AFC title, they're not going out and trying to make a move to get a quarterback. They're not trying to get a Nick Foles. And for me, I think I can only think that is in an effort to prove to Carson they're all in and they believe in him, which is fine. But at the same time, if you're going to put your season on hold, the shelf life for an NFL team to stay together, stay healthy, all of it isn't great. So they really, I feel like, are hurting themselves by saying they're just going to ride with Jacob Eason or any of these other guys until Carson comes back. So I kind of think that might have something to do with the fact that they don't want to hurt his psyche anymore.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And that's where I was going with it is, when they made the decision to draft Jalen Hurts with understanding, and that's a Doug Peterson decision, right? And he's fighting for his job. And at the end of the day, we won't get into week 17 where I think whatever. The bottom line was for Doug Peterson to make that decision that we're going to draft a Jalen Hurts is already showing I don't have the confidence that Carson Wentz can be that guy. And you can spin it and coach speak however you want, and you can make the argument that, hey, you got hurt in 2017. It was the backup that got us to the Super Bowl. You're still the guy, but we need to make sure we've got a number 2 that can get us where we need to go if something happens to you again. Sure. You can spin that however you want. Players will see right through that. And Carson Wentz, the one knock that I will have on him, did not, from a mental perspective, which is a QB is extremely important, didn't handle that very well. And you could see that as the tailspin started to happen last year. Dak Prescott faced the same situation with injuries last year, but he balled out for 5 games. You can say that it was fourth quarter. You can say whatever you want. He had 3 linemen out by week 6, by week 5 when he got hurt. He faced some of the same situations. Now, yes, he has the receivers. I get it. But I felt like with the Colts, that is a mistake that that I think Doug is, or not Doug, but I think that's what Frank Reich is looking at and saying, hey, I saw how this played out in Philadelphia. If I bring somebody in like a Nick Foles, which was the first name everybody wanted to go to, the psyche of Carson Wentz based on that decision, right? It's like Jalen Hurts 2.0. I think Reich realizes like, hey, we're going to take Jacob Eason. He spent a year in the offense. You know, he doesn't have the mobility of a Carson Wentz, but he's a guy that can do what Phillip Rivers did and dink and dunk. If I need to ask him to do that, we're going to figure out a way. Let's hope he gets back closer to 6 or 7 weeks than 12. And then hopefully we can get Quentin Nelson back. We get Eric Fisher back at left tackle, and we get Ryan Kelly back in a couple weeks at center. That I think they're trusting him and saying, we've committed to him, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to make Carson Wentz work when he's ready.
Yeah.
Right or wrong.
I'm rooting for the kid. He's a good kid. I've seen nothing but things that made me like him early on, but that's just a big concern. I can remember Sim sitting, I think he was sitting next to Zach Ertz, who's obviously not happy in Philadelphia as well, but it was after a game last year, and they were sitting on the bench, and they were just kind of like, woe is me almost, it looked like. And as a former coach, and this is called the coach approach, and for me, man, that is when you've got to go in there and be a part of the team. That is when you got to go in there and understand there was a reason why something played out the way it did, and act like a teammate who is about achieving a common goal. And for that moment, it looked like it was more about Carson Wentz.
And I can't, hey, I'm with you. I think that Frank Reich looks at it and says, hey, people can say Nick Foles won the Super Bowl. I've made that claim. I get it. I used to joke around the Eagle fans about that, but they were 11-2 with Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz was playing out of his mind. He was in the MVP conversation. So we can't discount what he did when he was with Frank Reich. And you're going into a much better situation from an offensive line perspective, and you're going into a much better situation from a running back perspective. Although I get Miles Sanders, but it's a little bit different when you've got Jonathan Taylor, you've got Naheem Hines, and you've got Marlon Mack. It's different than Boston Scott and Miles Sanders. And I like Kenny Gainwell, but let's be real. I'll take that Colts backfield all day long.
I'm cutting you off only because you keep bringing up Marlon Mack, which means you think that he's going to be okay, which makes me think and hope that Cam Akers is going to be okay. With that, you know, we one of the things that we want to do is to bring on analysts and have an opportunity to, you know, Twitter is 140 characters, and you get analysts or you get people who put things out there. And I know for me, again, I keep going back to this. I'm simply a guy who wants to get better at the game. And by getting better at the game is to not only read content, but to ask questions off of the content. And so with that, we've got a great segment. I'm looking forward to it. It's called Meet the Analyst. And we're going to bring up some tweets that this analyst has put out, and we're going to ask him to expand on it. So with that, Coach Bruce, why don't you introduce our first analyst?
Yeah, so we've got It Just Made Sense. This analyst, I'll go back on June 3rd. I think I put a post up on Twitter that was a microphone that I purchased, which you can see in the screen, to do a podcast. And he reached out to me in my chat and said, hey, I saw you bought the microphone. What are you thinking in terms of a podcast? I'm going to ad lib here a little bit. And I said, yeah. I said, I've always wanted to do my own podcast. So I said, you know, Brett reached out to me, and we decided we're going to partner up, a couple old ball coaches, and talk about football, the real game of football, and how that relates to fantasy football. And he loved the concept, and he said, hey, man, we'd love to have you guys underneath our umbrella, you know, at the cut. And that conversation turned into, you know, us having the show tonight. So without him, we wouldn't be here. I've been a huge advocate of his on the Twitter space. I love it because he sticks to his takes. He backs it up. He's a Debbie writer at Fantasy Pros. He's the host of the Debbie Royale. He is the director of operations at the Cut Football. He is the man, the myth, the legend, the one and only Christian Williams at Steve Williams NFL. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you. That was by far the best introduction I've ever gotten. No offense to all the other podcasts I've ever been on, but thank you. That was humbling.
You bet, man. I appreciate you, brother.
Well,
Yeah,
we're glad to have you, man. We're glad to have you. We can't thank you enough.
Oh yeah, I'm glad to be here. How do you guys feel this first show's going? Because I think it's going awesome.
Well, I mean, to us, it's not a show. To us, it's sitting around having a drink and talking football. So as long as we keep it that way, I think we'll be all right.
Good stuff. I'm a little nervous about these tweets, by the way.
Well, we're gonna have.
Yeah. Go ahead, Brett.
I was gonna say, we're gonna have Coach Bruce go first with his first tweet, but we just, it really comes down to, there's so much clickbait, or there's so much things out there just to generate likes and I'm all for it. I mean, half my stuff is a GIF with some sarcastic thing, and that's simply because I openly admit I am not an analyst, but I can observe things, and I can say that right now, Sam Darnold is probably packing his bags during the time that Zach Wilson was having his pro day, because he was killing it, and that's all everyone talked about. That's my Twitter game. Your Twitter game is based off a heck of a lot of work, so that's what it's all about.
Yeah, yes. I love it. R Hall NFL jumping into the chat says he can't wait for us to put Steve Williams in the hot seat.
Oh, Randy.
So here we go. First question, which, by the way, Randy, thank you as well, brother, for allowing us to do
absolutely.
this.
Hey, one more thing,
you had to sign off on it.
A few minutes ago, Matt Tazinari piped in, and I just want to give him a shout out. Yeah. He's in my home league all 26 years. Appreciate you watching, and let's make a deal soon.
There we go. Trades happening on the coach approach. I love it. All right. So the first question, the first tweet, and Christian, you and I have talked about this, so this is not, that probably gives you a little bit of a hint. Okay. Going back to probably his college days, I'm going to go way back to maybe from the QB1, Netflix show that he was on, but you have been steadfast in your support for Justin Fields and why he's the QB1. What I loved about your take was not only did you back it up and talking about him over Trevor Lawrence, but after the draft, with the landing spot in play, you didn't back down from it. You stayed with it. You held true. Talk to me about Justin Fields and why he's your QB1.
Wow, that's a good place to start, I think. Justin Fields. Yeah, I know. Justin Fields, to me, has not only does he have the it factor, and you see it pop up in big games, but he has everything that you want in a quarterback prospect. And he was a highly touted recruit. There were sites that had him as better than Trevor Lawrence coming into college. And then he was kind of dealt a crappy hand when he went to Georgia. He should have started over Jake Fromm. I think everyone knows that, because even when he was on the field that freshman year, he was better than Jake Fromm. And then people clung to that. And then people kind of ran with it. And then somehow Zach Wilson was better than him. And somehow Trey Lance was, which I said the other day, if I were to argue with myself, I could talk myself into Trey Lance being better because of the ceiling. But Justin Fields, he's pinpoint accurate. He can make plays with his legs. He's got a hose of an arm that people just don't realize because he throws with touch as well. And ultimately, he ran an NFL-style offense at Ohio State. And people don't realize that either. But it's something that I've tried to help educate people and realize that Ryan Day's offense is not Urban Meyer's offense. Luckily for Trevor, he gets to run Urban Meyer's offense and kind of incorporate some of those college schemes. But Justin Fields, every time I watched him, I convinced myself if he can just clean up his pocket presence and have a little bit quicker of a trigger, he'll be my quarterback one. And then he did that in that shortened 2020 season. And so I stuck to it. And the landing spot's a little scary, I will admit. Matt Nagy does not excite me. But I also think that Matt Nagy was limited by some of the stuff that Mitch Trubisky could not do. So I'm hoping that Justin Fields unlocks this offense and unlocks Darnell Mooney and gets Allen Robinson even more looks. And I'm excited to see Justin Fields. I've drafted him everywhere. I'm practicing what I preach. So
I think part of, and that's such a great take, but I think part of the thing with Justin Fields, and we're going to talk a lot about coach speak probably in our podcast every week, but one of the things that gets thrown out about Justin Fields and a lot of players, whether it's at the high school level, the college level, or in the pros, sometimes players make things look so easy that it doesn't look flashy. They know how to play. They know how to play fast, and there's a big difference between playing fast and playing in a hurry. Right? Playing fast means you know what the defense is doing. You read and you react, and you make a throw. And then on the other side of that, playing in a hurry is like, oh shit, there's defensive end, the pockets collapse. I'm trying to wait and get to my secondary read, which is going to be, it's not, the ball's not out 0.8 to 1.2 seconds, it's out of 1.5 to 1.8. Pockets collapsing. I got to get rid of the ball. I'm just going to take off, right? Or I'm just going to throw the ball on the ground or do whatever it is. I think he made the offense look so easy, and you alluded to it, and I'm glad you did. Ohio State does run a pro-style offense. I think people don't understand that. It is not the Urban Meyer offense. But, man, I tell you what, if you're the coach at Georgia, we'll leave the names out of it, and you took Jake Fromm over Justin Fields, wow. You got to question the process there.
You threw away a national championship is what you did.
100%.
Just to have some, which I understand being, like faithful to your guy that got you there. But man, when you saw Justin Fields, even when he would take off on runs as a freshman, you're like, this kid has it. He has it. And you alluded to, he makes it look easy. And I think that also not had people knocking him because he's got great footwork. He always resets his feet. He drives the ball with his hips, and he doesn't have like this crazy flick of the wrist, but that's because he's so consistent, and he knows that he needs to reset himself. He's the best quarterback prospect I've ever graded. So I know most people.
Let me ask you a question about graded. I read your bio, and it looked like you and just your buddy just started talking about fantasy football and started getting into it, and then you wanted to. How did you learn what makes a good quarterback or a good running back, or how do you grade? Where did all that come from?
Now we're speaking my language. I love it.
I will say the thing that intrigues me most about quarterbacks, and the reason we started kind of grading, is because I'm a Browns fan. And so I was always looking at quarterbacks growing up. I had to watch the quarterbacks. And so as we got into college and Randy and I and Sean, who used to be on our podcast, and Brandon Sweet as well. Like, we had a friend group that all are still tied with the cut, but we would sit in the back of our classes and we would watch game tape. I remember watching, I think it was Carson Wentz heading into his draft, and Randy and I would bounce ideas off of each other. Like, what is he doing that is translatable? And then just studying up, reading as much as I can, and kind of learning some of the new age mechanics, what I'm studying, what teams are looking for. And then we sat down and we put together this vast scale that we've actually tweaked and scaled back a bit. The first time we had like 13 different attributes that we tossed on each quarterback that we were grading, scale of 1 to 10. And then however it came out, it led to some misses. I mean, I missed bad on Herbert. I will say that's my worst quarterback evaluation of all time. But you just take those bad evaluations and you kind of learn from that. And then we have an entire scale for every single position. We put together a draft guide here at the cut. And so last year I scouted 220, 250 prospects around there. And just went through at least 3 games each, and preferably more with quarterbacks. We watch every single game that we possibly can, because quarterbacks, you're looking for consistencies and you're looking for various different things that can make a good quarterback. The most interesting part to me is that the NFL is definitely moving towards quarterbacks that have athleticism, can get out of the pocket, can run. And so that's how we kind of tweaked our model a bit. The pocket passer can be successful, but we're seeing that the NFL doesn't want that. They want guys that can make plays. And so it's just, I can't speak enough. It's so fun to sit there and watch prospects. Like, I can call it a hobby. It's my favorite thing to do. When I'm doing nothing, I'll just sit here and toss some game film on and grade another game.
That's where I think we're probably very similar, man. There's something about, taping an NFL taping. It shows how old I am, right? But, looking at an NFL game and watching plays over and over again. Like, I know for quarterbacks, for me, we talk about, the R4 system, like a rhythm, read, rush, release, which is rhythm is your first read, then your second is and so looking at, for me, quarterback play, and you hit on with Justin Fields, his ability to set his feet, understand his footwork is always on time, his hips are always in the right direction, and he understands, what he's doing. And I remember one of the knocks on him was like he doesn't go through a full progression. Like, you want to sit there and go, man, are you watching it? Like, do you understand what a full progression is and what the offensive scheme is? If you look at flood concepts or, I don't want to get too much coach speak, but if you understand what an offense is trying to do and what the defense is showing pre-snap versus post-snap, he actually is pretty freaking good at getting through his progression,
Yeah. When I can't remember what game it was. Penn State, maybe, where he starts on his left side, he snaps his hips to his second read, he snaps his hips to his third read, and then he ends up throwing to, I think, his fourth read. And of course I went through and charted all of that stuff, but yeah. I don't think people understand the pre-snap versus the post-snap and kind of hidden coverages and whatnot, and getting too far into the weeds isn't really worth it all the time. It's kind of just letting them know, no, this kid actually knows exactly what he's looking at, and he knows it pre-snap. And so I love Justin Fields. I love talking about Justin Fields.
I like him.
that one.
I try and get as many of him. I'll get any of the top three, to be honest, and I'll take Zach if it's the right price. But you talk. I love Trey Lance. I love what we're seeing out of him. But another guy that I really like, and this, that dog gif where all of a sudden he's in there and he just turns his head real quick. Well, this tweet right here from you the other day on August 1st. Rashad Bateman is the 2021 version of Justin Jefferson. As someone who just found a way to get him in my home league, I had the 206. If you can believe it, in one quarterback, he got to 205. And I'm sitting there and I was trying to be disciplined. I'm not going to trade up. This guy is not going to make the right pick. And he picks Bateman. So that leaves me, and I go straight off my list, and that leaves me with Kadarius Toney, who has not had a good camp, and I'm not, but so that's where I was at. Fast forward 5 hours later, and I send a trade, and the trade was Kadarius Toney and Gus Edwards, and now Rashad Bateman's mine. So with that being said, when you say that, does that mean I'm getting a guy who's going to have 1,200 yards this year and 10-plus touchdowns? What are we saying here?
No, I am not saying that. And the only reason I'm not saying that is because, like Coach alluded to when he was speaking about the Ravens a few minutes ago, is the passing volume isn't going to quite be there. Even if there's a projected uptick. What I'm saying, though, is you're getting an extremely undervalued receiver that no one thinks much of, that is being faded due to his landing spot, who I believe is going to take quite a bit of the target share. So I actually tweeted that originally back in November of 2020. And so I was looking back and I said, oh, man, I still believe this. And it's actually more true now because people see him on the Ravens and they say, oh, I don't want to touch that. It's not going to happen. Plus they have Mark Andrews. My argument is that personnel dictates scheme. And with Bateman being there, it's showing that they are committed to throwing to their wide receivers. They couldn't because all the receivers were under 6 foot. Bateman is something that they have not had, and that's a guy that wins short and intermediate. I honestly think he's more of a PPR monster, obviously not than Justin Jefferson, because that was just a legendary rookie year, and we're not going to see too many of those. But getting him for that offer, that's absurd. That's kind of what I'm talking about, and you're going to be really happy with Bateman, in my opinion.
Yeah, when this whole draft, go ahead, Coach.
I was going to say Bateman, even pre-draft, Bateman. I went back and forth with him being my wide receiver 1 or 2. And people thought it was crazy. And it was like, if you watch the film, and there's a comparison that I would give to Michael Thomas, and from the standpoint of what he does in the short to intermediate game is outstanding. If you just watch him on film, and I'm a wide receiver coach, so that's my passion. That's the one position I love to break down, and then quarterbacks. But he's a technician. I mean, he's a guy that can run a full route tree. If you need him to get you, a slant against man press, he can get you that in a critical situation. If you need an intermediate route to get to the first down marker, he can give you that. He's not afraid to go over the middle of the field. If you need to, I just think he has a full arsenal, a full toolbox. If you want to say he's not going to run by. He's not a 4-3 guy. I think everybody knows that he's not that guy. But from a tactical standpoint, how he gets in and out of routes, how he sets up his stems, how he uses his full toolbox of release moves. I always thought, Rob, and it was funny because I used to argue with people about the passing volume in Baltimore prior to the draft, that there's a reason why Kenny Golladay didn't want to go to Baltimore. Guys are already in the league that have some say in where they go, didn't want to go there because they wanted to get the next big contract after that one. And they felt like in that scheme, not the best fit. Well, when you're drafted into that team, you don't have an option. Right?
Yep.
But I felt like now Greg Roman, and I think Jacob Sanderson said, now Greg Roman realizes I've got to be able to come from behind. I've got to be able to win in the playoffs. I've got to be able to if I'm going to beat the Chiefs and we're behind and it's an AFC champ, and I got to get past the Chiefs. And I got to get past the Bills. I've got to be able to score points. And I can't do that with 5 yards in a cloud of dust, even with 5.4 yards per carry, as a team.
Exactly.
You're not going to win in the playoffs with that formula anymore. You've got to be able to outscore. I used to be a big believer in defense wins championships. Now I flip to, if you can't outscore the opponent, it doesn't matter what your defense does. You've got to be able to throw the football in today's NFL.
For two old guys, what a game is, isn't it, Coach?
Yeah, totally different. I love
Christian bringing up the fact that NFL is God, these quarterbacks that are playing now wouldn't even been given a shot 15 years ago.
Exactly.
I mean, Russell Wilson is why there is a Kyler Murray and so forth, and on and on and on. And it's fun. It's what we should be wanting is excitement and electricity on the football field.
Absolutely.
You got another one, Coach. Send this one at him because this is one that really shocked me.
No, this was a good one.
Oh, boy.
So Mike Davis. Let's talk about Mike Davis for a second.
Let's talk about Mike Davis. All right.
Yeah, we saw what happened with Christian McCaffrey last season.
Uh-huh.
I think we can all agree that Mike Davis outperformed expectations in Carolina for sure. And you could throw all the fancy metrics and all the advanced analytics that you want. I love numbers. I'm a freaking spreadsheet freak. I get it, but I'm also a film guy. And so film first probably. But you had to take, and I don't remember what the date was, you said Kadri Allison over Mike Davis. Tell me about it.
All right. So I said there's a world in which Kadri Allison wins that job over Mike Davis. And the reason I say that is what we normally see with guys like Mike Davis is even if they break out one year and they outperform expectation, they kind of go back to being who they were. And who Mike Davis is just a decent depth running back. And I think the reason I said it was going to be Allison is because while I don't love his film, I think that he has things to work on. The reports are that things are clicking. There's a reason that this coaching staff decided to keep him on rather than Ito Smith and Brian Hill. They let both of those guys go, but they saw something in Allison, and Allison is a bigger back. He can carry the load, and this is an Arthur Smith offense now. And so it's going to be heavy 12 personnel. You're going to get running backs that run between the tackles. And I think Mike Davis can do that. 100%. Don't get me wrong. There's also a world where Mike Davis just goes back to being his committee back. And I also think there's a world in which it's just a committee back always. Allison has some type of sustainable role. People didn't like that take. They said that Allison is bad. But the thing is you can pull some clips from Allison's film and say, I could see where this kid could actually be good. He's big. He's got fairly quick feet. He doesn't have the best vision in the world, but when it clicks, like it clicks well. And Arthur Smith's offense does kind of lend a hand to those running backs. And so I probably fired that one off maybe a little too fast. I should have worded it a little,
I'm a big Arthur
better.
Smith guy too, so
yeah,
I get it, and I think there's a lot to be said for what Arthur Smith did in Tennessee and what he's going to bring to Atlanta, and that's why I think pre-draft I was really hoping if if Julio Jones had stayed there, and I did a podcast, I can't remember who, with TDC, and we talked about what the Atlanta Falcons should do in the draft, and he was talking about trading back and getting multiple picks. I said, no, take Kyle Pitts with Hayden Hurst in an Arthur Smith offense with Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, and tell me how you're going to stop that on the offensive side of the ball. The defense was trash, and so you got to figure out a way to score points to be competitive in that division with the Saints. So I felt like that would be awesome. And so I'm a big Arthur Smith guy. So I just, obviously Julio Jones gone now, and I wanted JV and Hawkins to be the guy. Like I drafted him some late in some drafts and said, man, I could see a situation where JV and Hawkins week 8 or 9 could be the guy.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, he flashed today from what I saw, which is good.
Yeah,
which is good.
And one thing that kind of lays credence to what you said, though, is you brought up how everybody, I think Coach Bruce did, brought up everyone was talking about a Javonte Williams there, or one of the top backs going to Atlanta. I think that they didn't address the running back position at all. Kind of leads you to think that you might be onto something. At least they have the trust that he could be the number 2 and fill in for a Mike Davis if needed. That says volumes in itself, because 17 games, you're not going to get guys playing 17 games at the running back spot.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think I keep talking about this, and I think people are starting to catch on. We're not going to have workhorse backs here in a couple of years. Not when we go to 18 games. You can't. It's not sustainable, and then you're limiting your running backs to one contract strictly. I know people say don't pay running backs, but I think we're starting to see that mindset flip. I think NFL teams are flipping that. And so I think there's a chance that Hawkins gets on the field some this year too. There's a chance that Caleb Huntley, if he shines over Hawkins, one of those guys, I think they could get some run. I think we're going to see some 3 backfields, and fantasy football players are not going to like that. I know I won't.
Yeah, I totally agree. But you bring up the great point. There aren't that many bell cow guys out there. So if you're not taking one real early, even if it's a committee situation like Chase Edmonds or a Connor, I mean, if you got one of them, you feel like you're going to get some run each week, and sometimes that's about as good as it gets.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I'm excited to see what the fantasy community views the running back position as in about 10 years. I think it's going to be vastly different.
I think you're going to see
it already is.
Yeah, I think you're going to see it continue what you're seeing now, which is offensive coordinators, the younger guys that love the outside zone scheme. It can run play action. They can run the RPO game off of that. And you can get a quarterback in space if things break down, can take off and get you a first down. I think where the offensive side of the football and where it's gone, man, and I love it as a wide receiver. Like, to me, it's like spread the defense out. Let the quarterback make a check at line of scrimmage. There's nobody better at it than Aaron Rodgers. But, I've got a run play and I've got a pass play. Let me see what the box is doing. Let me see what the secondary is doing, and then I'm going to call my play. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that, and I think you're going to spread some people out, and you're not, because it is going to go. I do think it's going to go to 18 games. You're not going to see, which is sad. You're not going to see the Derrick Henrys and the Zeke Elliott's and the those guys that the Emmitt Smiths, if you want to go back in the day, and the Walter Paytons, and you're just not going to see it as much anymore. It's all about fat. You better be able to catch the ball in the backfield. You better be able to, when a team spreads you out, be able to run an outside zone scheme where you can pick the gap, to foot in the ground and go and get vertical. Yep. So the game's definitely going in that direction for sure. I could talk about that stuff all day, man.
Yeah, we could. Hey, Christian, man, we thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you for coming on, man. Coach Bruce, that was fun.
It was a blast, man. I could do it all night long, man.
Appreciate you guys.
At some point.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for having me. And I just want to say, you guys, this is going to be one of my favorite shows. I'm going to tune in every Wednesday night. Obviously, I might have a little bit of bias because of that logo down there, but I'll say I don't think I do, because I think you guys are wonderful people, very, very bright individuals, and we're very excited to have you on board with us at the Cut Podcast Network. So
we appreciate it. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity. Bruce, we'll see you next week, brother.
Cheers to you, brother.
All right.
Take care, guys. Thanks, Christian. I appreciate it, man.
Bye, guys.